How much do you really trust your closest friends? Would you tell them your thoughts? What are you doing? Skylar Neese thought she could, but one night changed her life and the lives of her two best friends forever. Most people could never picture themselves killing someone else. Imagine if you were the kind of person who would kill your best friend. Today, we're going to talk about the murder of Skylar Neese, which is so shocking, confusing, and surprising that no one could have ever guessed that the killers were once two people who cared about her more than anyone else in the world. Skylar was last seen at her home in Star City, West Virginia, in July 2012. Mary and Dave Neese only had one child, Skylar, who was born in February 1996. She wanted to be a criminal lawyer and worked at Wendy's part-time. Skylar was last seen on July 5, 2012, when a security camera caught her in front of her apartment building. The camera caught her sneaking out of her room through the window and getting into a gray car. Sheila Eddy, Skylar's best friend since they were kids, owned the car. They met when they were 8 years old in grade school. They were so close that they were more like sisters than friends. They used to be able to go in and out of each other's homes at will and spend a lot of time together. When Skylar started high school, Sheila met a girl named Rachel Schaaf and became friends with her. All three girls became fast friends, and for a while, they couldn't be apart. But as they got older, Skylar and her other two friends started to drift apart. Sheila and Rachel both had parents who had split up, and Skylar would be a rock for them emotionally. Sheila had a lot of freedom, and Rachel, whose Catholic family was very strict, often looked to Sheila to spice up her life. Skylar's parents were stricter about curfews and what she could do with her free time. They also encouraged her interests and abilities. As Sheila and Rachel started to drink, try drugs, and hook up with boys, the differences in how they were raised became clear. Twitter pretty much kept track of every second of their lives. Skylar tweeted more than once about how she felt left out by her friends, and like she couldn't trust anyone, from what they ate to the latest fight. Her family and friends said that Skylar and Sheila were fighting a lot about almost everything. Skylar and Rachel were always trying to get closer to Sheila, but most of the time, Sheila liked Rachel better. This was hard for Skylar, especially since she was the first person Sheila ever made friends with. But the secret that could have cost Skylar her life was not on her Twitter page. Skylar started drinking and smoking when she was with her friends because she wanted to keep up with the rest of the group. She wrote in her notebook about something that happened when she spent the night at Rachel's house. All three girls chose to get a little tipsy and go through the liquor cabinet. Skylar was completely shocked when, according to her, Rachel and Sheila started kissing in the bedroom. She wrote that this went on for a long time and that she felt very uncomfortable being in the room with them while it was happening. But she didn't want to leave because she knew that if she did, Rachel's mom would find out that they had been drinking, and she didn't want anyone to get in trouble. So Skylar kept it a secret, but it changed the bond, which made Rachel and Sheila grow closer. They started spending more time together without Skylar. They went for fun rides outside of town so they could smoke without getting into trouble. They would sometimes dress alike at school on purpose to make Skylar feel bad. But for some reason, the three of them stayed friends and kept hanging out together. From the outside, they looked like a normal group of friends with a lot of drama. Nobody knew that Rachel and Sheila didn't want to be friends with Skylar in the first place. So why didn't they just stop talking to her and hanging out with her? Their plan to get rid of Skylar was much more long-lasting than that. Skylar climbed out of her bedroom window just after midnight and ran across the parking lot to Sheila's car. All night long, the girls had been trying to get her to sneak out and get high with them. They didn't stop until Skylar gave in. Skylar got in the rear seat, and they started driving toward Brave, a town they had been to before just across the Pennsylvania border. They sat down in the woods when they got there. Even though it was over 90 degrees, Rachel and Sheila both wore hooded sweatshirts. When Skylar stood up to get her lighter from the car, they pulled out the knives they had been hiding under them. On 3, they ran toward Skylar and began stabbing her. Why? Was Skylar's last word. Nothing was wrong until the next morning, when Skylar didn't show up to work and her parents realized she never came home because her bedroom window was still open. They asked Sheila if she had seen her by calling her. She said that they had sneaked out to go smoke, but they dropped Skylar off close to her house so she could sneak back in without waking anyone up. When people heard that Skylar had gone missing, stories spread like wildfire. Most people thought she ran away from home to meet someone she met online or that she got too drunk at a party and died. And the people there got scared and got rid of her body. Skylar's family knew that she hadn't run away. This wasn't the first time she'd sneaked out, and her dad knew that when she left her window open, it was so she could get back in, so she planned to come back. She had also left all of her things behind. There were no clothes, toothbrushes, or contact lenses. Investigators quickly threw out the idea that she had run away from home. Rachel and Sheila, who had been acting like sad friends who just wanted Skylar to come home, became the center of attention. They kept using social media, and on Skylar's Facebook page, they wrote about how much they missed her. Even though Sheila knew Skylar was dead, she helped put up flyers asking for help finding her. The act didn't really convince the detectives. A neighborhood police officer named Jessica Colbrink was suspicious of Sheila from the start. Sheila didn't feel anything. She wouldn't cry unless you asked her a question she didn't want to answer. After Skylar went missing, some of the things the girls did made them very suspicious. For one thing, Rachel went to church summer camp like nothing had happened a week after the murder. Sheila still had friends, and she was often seen out with them having a good time. You wouldn't expect this from two people whose best friend has gone missing. A state policeman named Chris Berry was put in charge of the case, and he came up with a creative way to find out what the girls were really up to. He made a fake social media account and said he was a high school boy from West Virginia. Then he started reading all the social media posts he could find. People didn't like what he found. Chris noticed that the girls would make like 30 posts about going out or not going to school, and then every once in a while they would post something like, "Come home, Skylar. We miss you so much." It was almost like they were trying to live their lives while still trying to look sad enough for people to think they were innocent. More CCTV really proved that Rachel and Sheila were in on it. The video from Skylar's parking lot didn't help the police very much in their investigation. They couldn't even tell what color the car was because the video was so shaky. After some digging, more video from a gas station turned up, and it was clear that Sheila's gray sedan was headed toward the Pennsylvania border. Rachel and Sheila's phones were also picked up by a phone tower near Blackville, which they would have had to go through to get to the border. Every time the cops talked to either girl, it seemed like they were slowly chipping away at their pretense of innocence. Every time they talked to Rachel, they could see that she was getting more and more nervous. Sheila, on the other hand, was always cool and sure of herself, and she knew how to explain away changes or holes in her story. Investigators said that even with skilled criminals, they didn't see that very often. They planned to test the girls to see if they were telling the truth. Sheila agreed to take it because she thought she could pass it, but her faith wasn't enough. She was scared on the way to the station to take the test, so she jumped out of her dad's car and ran away. She ended up in Sheila's mom's car as she was going to get Sheila's electronics. After this, people in the neighborhood, including Skylar's parents, began to dislike Sheila and Rachel. Skylar's mom wrote on Facebook that she thought the girls were involved in her daughter's kidnapping. They were getting so much bad attention from the cops, their neighbors, and other kids at school that they stopped going to school and started homeschooling instead. Rachel finally lost it in December, when she started yelling and hitting her parents so hard that they couldn't keep her under control. Her parents called 911. Rachel was taken to Chestnut Ridge Center, a place for people with mental health issues, where she will be closely watched. A few days later, she went to another interview with her lawyer and simply said, "We stabbed her." Rachel told the cops everything over the next few hours. She told them that she and Sheila had planned the murder more than a month before it happened. They wanted to kill Rachel before she went to camp, so they hid knives, a shovel, and a change of clothes in the trunk of Sheila's car. She told them that the ground was too cold to dig a grave, so they left Skylar by the side of the road and covered her with leaves and twigs. When the police asked her why they did it, she said it was because they no longer liked her. Skylar's body and cell phone were found at the scene of the crime, which led detectives to find that Skylar's blood was still in the trunk of the car. Both Rachel and Sheila were put in jail. Rachel confessed to second-degree murder after making a deal with the police. She was sentenced to 30 years in prison, but she could be released after 10 years. She cried during her hearing and said sorry to the Neese family in a long letter. Sheila admitted to first-degree murder and was given a life sentence with the chance of release after 15 years. She didn't have anything to say to Skylar's family, who had once treated her like a member of their own family. Some people still don't know why they chose to kill Skylar. I think they were afraid that she would tell other people what happened at the party. Skylar could have been trying to force them to do something. The fact that Rachel wed a prisoner in the year 2020 lends some support to this theory. I think they might have been more than just friends, but they were afraid to say so because Rachel came from a Catholic home. Even if that were true, they would never be able to explain what they did to Skylar, who was supposed to be their best friend. How do you feel about this situation? Do you really think that Skylar was killed because her friends stopped liking her? I can't wait to see what you have to say in the comments.